Hello everyone. Welcome to the African Tales Unveiled channel. Today, I bring to you a very special story, one that could change the way you think about justice and courage. This is not the kind of story you come across every day. And I'm sure that after watching it, you won't be able to forget it. Today, we will witness a highly tense situation, where a powerful man thinks he can do whatever he wants. But then, an unexpected truth is revealed. And what will happen when Dwayne Johnson, one of the biggest stars in the world, decides to step in and protect an innocent woman? Will the truth be exposed? And will justice prevail? Let's follow along to find out. Before we begin, if you haven't subscribed to the African Tales Unveiled channel yet, make sure you do so now, so you won't miss any inspiring and interesting stories like this one. And don't forget to like and leave a comment below the video. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. This story could change the way we view the world and ourselves. So, let's dive into today's story and discover what happens when justice stands up against injustice. Can Dwayne Johnson change the fate of an innocent woman? Keep watching to find out the answer. The story begins here, and it will keep you hooked. Dwayne Johnson had just entered a small cafe on the corner of the street, where the warm golden sunlight streamed through the windows, creating a peaceful atmosphere. After a tense meeting, he needed a little time to relax and recharge. Dwayne chose a seat by the window, looking out at the busy street. This cafe wasn't famous or luxurious, but there was something so comfortable about it. As if he could pause everything for a few minutes. As soon as he sat down and placed his coffee on the table, his attention was drawn to a strange scene unfolding at the table next to him. A middle-aged man, dressed in a suit, was standing and angrily pointing at a young woman, who could only lower her head, clutching her handbag as if trying to hold on to her last shred of dignity. "You can't sit here. Get out," the man yelled, his voice dripping with contempt. Dwayne took a deep breath, feeling he couldn't just sit there. The whole cafe fell silent, and everyone looked towards the man. But no one dared to intervene. Dwayne had seen situations like this before. But this time, something inside him couldn't ignore it. He stood up and walked over with the confidence and strength of a star, yet with calm and compassion in his eyes. When the man saw Dwayne approach, he stopped, his eyes challenging Dwayne. "What's going on? Are you going to side with this girl too?" The man scoffed. Dwayne looked into the terrified eyes of the young woman, then turned back to the man with a sigh. "No. I'm not taking sides. I just don't like the way you're treating someone. And I'm sure she doesn't deserve to be treated like this." The man smirked, refusing to back down. "Who are you to talk like that? I'm a big investor. I have the right to decide who can sit here and who can't." Dwayne showed no fear. He just smiled. "Your power might help you own a lot of things, but it can't buy dignity and respect." The atmosphere grew tense. The young woman began to look more anxious, her face paling. It seemed like she was feeling the pressure of the man yelling at her. Dwayne could feel her fear, and he knew what he had to do. He turned to the man with a serious expression. "You seem confident in your power. But I don't think power can change what's right or wrong. Stop it, or I'll have to call the police," Dwayne said, his voice deep and firm. The man stared at Dwayne, trying to gauge whether he would really follow through. After a moment, he sneered and stepped back. "You think you can do anything to me? The police? You don't know who I am." Dwayne didn't respond, but he could tell this wasn't a simple situation. He looked at the girl again and saw that she was still terrified. Are you sure this man hasn't threatened you before? Dwayne asked, his eyes full of concern. The girl nodded, still clutching her handbag tightly. Yes. He's the one who threatened me before. But I don't know what to do. I'm scared to confront him. Dwayne looked at her with a reassuring smile. There's nothing to be afraid of. Today. I'll stand with you. We won't let anyone bully us. As soon as he spoke, the atmosphere shifted. The entire cafe began to pay more attention to the conversation between Dwayne and the man. People started to look away from their phones and laptops, curious about what was happening. Meanwhile, the man still refused to back down. He pulled out his phone and began calling someone. This can't end here. I'm going to call my police friend. And he'll take care of this guy. Dwayne wasn't worried. He knew that when the man called the police, the truth would soon come to light. But he didn't think the man would just let this confrontation go easily. All right. You can call the police if you want. But I don't think you'll like the result. Dwayne said with a slight smile. At that moment, the girl looked at Dwayne with grateful eyes. But still a little nervous. You don't think something bad will happen? Do you? Dwayne placed his hand on her shoulder, smiling to reassure her. No, we're not doing anything wrong. Everything will be fine. The girl nodded. And Dwayne could feel her calming down. Meanwhile, the man finished his call and turned back to Dwayne with a look of disdain. You'll see. This won't end here. The entire cafe was now filled with a sense of unease, as no one knew what would happen next. But something in Dwayne's eyes gave people a sense of peace. He wasn't just a famous star, but also a man of courage. And when he decided to stand up to protect the vulnerable, nothing would make him back down. At this point, the story had reached its climax. The tension in the air seemed to spread everywhere. And everyone could feel that an unavoidable confrontation was about to happen. The entire cafe seemed to freeze in that moment, as if everything had come to a halt, waiting for an important decision. Dwayne stood there, between a powerful man and a trembling woman in fear. His gaze was resolute. But inside, he could feel the tension of the situation. This wasn't just an ordinary confrontation, it was a struggle between right and wrong, between power and justice. The man, dressed in luxury, looked at Dwayne, still in disbelief that anyone dared to stand up to him. What do you think you're going to do? Stand here and teach me about so-called justice, he sneered, his voice still dripping with contempt. Dwayne didn't flinch. He looked directly into the man's eyes, a slight smile on his face. Calm but powerful. I don't need to teach you anything. I just want you to understand one simple thing: everyone deserves respect, no matter who they are. Dwayne's words made the tension in the air even thicker. The whole cafe seemed to be drawn into the conversation. The girl looked at Dwayne with gratitude, but also with concern. She didn't dare speak, but his presence made her feel safer. Dwayne turned to her and spoke softly, "You can stay here. No one can force you to leave." The girl sighed in relief, though she still wasn't completely at ease. Her eyes were still full of worry, as if she was waiting for an unexpected attack. Dwayne understood that feeling. He stepped closer to her, bent down, and said in a soothing tone, "Don't worry. I'll handle this." At that moment, the man stepped closer to Dwayne, his attitude one of defiance. "You really want to make a big deal out of this?" he asked, his face full of challenge. Dwayne stared into his eyes with determination. "Unafraid. I don't want to make a big deal. But if you keep threatening her, I won't stand by. The entire cafe fell silent. No one dared to speak. But Dwayne knew this wasn't the time for silence anymore. The truth needed to be revealed. And he was the one to stand up and make that happen. Suddenly, the man's phone rang. He looked at the screen and then turned to Dwayne. Smiling smugly. "All right. I've called a friend at the police station. He'll take care of this. I'm sure you can't beat the system. Right?" Dwayne didn't hesitate. He looked at the man with a challenging gaze. "You can call whoever you want. But I believe when the truth comes out, no one can stop justice." At that moment, a police officer appeared at the door of the cafe. Everyone turned to look at him. Then quickly glanced at Dwayne. As if waiting for his reaction. The officer stepped inside. Glanced at Dwayne. And then turned to the man. "Why did you call me?" the officer asked. His face cold. The man scratched his head. Looking a little embarrassed by the officer's arrival. "Officer. I need you to handle this situation. This guy here is inciting chaos and threatening me." Dwayne smirked. Not giving the man a chance to finish his sentence. "I'm just standing up for justice. As for him, he's threatening an innocent woman." The officer looked at Dwayne. Then turned to the man. "I understand. Who are you? And what do you want me to do?" the officer asked. His tone clearly neutral. The man began to lose his composure. "I'm a big investor. I control everything. And if you don't do something about this guy, I won't hesitate to escalate this to higher authorities." Dwayne paid no attention to the man's threats. He turned to the officer and spoke clearly, "I just want you to see the truth. Do your job." The officer said nothing. But he could see the truth in Dwayne's eyes. Then, he looked at the girl. As if searching for an explanation. She looked down. Too afraid to speak. Dwayne spoke again, "She's not guilty. She's just a victim in an unfair situation. I've heard her talk about being threatened for a long time. And I couldn't let this continue." The officer sighed. As if he now understood the situation. He pointed at the man. "Come with me outside. We'll sort this out at the station." The man looked at Dwayne one last time. Then bowed his head in acceptance of the truth. Dwayne just stood there. Saying nothing more. The officer escorted the man out. And the atmosphere in the cafe gradually eased. At that moment, Dwayne turned back to the girl and smiled gently. "See. Everything will be fine." The girl looked at him. Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. You don't know how scared I was. I didn't think I could escape from him." Dwayne shrugged. His expression calm. "No one deserves to live in fear. And I did the right thing. Now, you can live freely without worrying." The cafe slowly returned to its usual rhythm. But the atmosphere had changed. Everyone in the cafe felt a significant shift. One that couldn't be seen with the eyes. But could be clearly felt with every breath. They had witnessed the courage of a man who wasn't just a big star. But someone who stood up to protect what was right. Dwayne sat down. Took a sip of his coffee. And looked at the girl. "Now. If you feel safe, I'll leave. I'm sure you don't want to be the center of attention anymore. Right?" The girl smiled. The tears still fresh on her cheeks. But her smile shone like a sign of her newfound freedom. "I'll be fine. Thank you again. Dwayne." Dwayne stood up. Nodded gently. And walked out. Leaving behind not just a story in the cafe. But a lesson about courage. Fairness. And the price of standing up for what's right. The officer stepped outside, accompanied by the man, who was being led to the patrol car parked in front of the cafe. The cafe was now completely quiet. But the atmosphere still felt tense. As if everyone was waiting for something to happen next. Dwayne didn't leave immediately, he stood by the cafe door, observing everything carefully, as if ensuring the girl would no longer have to worry. While people in the cafe seemed to be returning to their normal lives, Dwayne's gaze remained fixed on the girl. His eyes were filled with concern. Not only because of the incident, but also because of her resilience. He knew that the challenges she faced were not simple. But no one but her could change her own life. The girl remained seated, her eyes full of unease but also containing a new hope. Dwayne approached and sat down across from her, offering a gentle smile. "How do you feel?" Dwayne asked, his voice calm yet encouraging. The girl looked at him, then began to cry. But not out of fear anymore. She cried out of relief. As if finally freed from the threat. "I can't believe I actually escaped from him," she said, her voice trembling. Dwayne remained silent, saying nothing, just sitting there and listening. He knew that sometimes what was most needed wasn't comforting words, but simply being there and allowing someone to feel supported. Only a few minutes later, the officer returned. Alone. With no sign of the man. He entered the cafe. His expression somewhat serious. But no longer tense or anxious. He walked up to Dwayne and the girl and sat down beside them. "Thank you for your help," the officer said, his gaze full of gratitude. "I really don't know where this situation would have gone without you." Dwayne smiled, looking at the officer. "No need to thank me. I just did what was right. And I believe it's everyone's responsibility to protect the vulnerable." The officer nodded, glancing over at the girl sitting across from them. "Here's the thing. That man, he's not just an investor. He's actually one of the most influential people in this area. Though not in the way we might have thought. He's been using his power and wealth to manipulate others." The girl looked at the officer, her eyes wide with surprise. He told me he was a good person." "Exactly," the officer replied. "In reality, he's been threatening not just you. He's been using his power to control and manipulate many others. Unfortunately, not everyone has the courage to stand up. But today is different. Today, you stood up for what's right. And because of that, the truth has come to light." Dwayne listened, his face emotionless. But inside he felt a sense of relief. Part of him had always felt heavy seeing the vulnerable being threatened without anyone stepping in. But today, that had changed. "So, what happens now?" the girl asked, her voice tinged with concern. The officer smiled at her. "Now, we will conduct an investigation. He's not just accused of threats, but he may also be involved in other illegal activities. We won't let him escape justice." Dwayne stood up, stretching his arms. "Good. We won't let anyone escape justice. Especially when they're abusing their power." The officer nodded, thanking Dwayne once more. He turned back to the girl. "You should feel safe now. He can't harm you anymore." The girl looked at Dwayne, thanking him once again. "You're the only one who made me feel like I could stand tall. No one else. Just you." Dwayne simply smiled, saying nothing more. He didn't need any thanks. For him, helping others was a natural thing to do. He turned back to the officer and the girl, then walked out of the cafe. The officer stood up as well, ready to continue his work. Before stepping out, Dwayne turned one last time, looking at the girl and smiling. "I hope you'll never have to face this again. And if you do, remember, we can always stand up and do what's right." The girl nodded, her eyes now shining with confidence. No longer filled with fear but with newfound self-assurance. She thanked Dwayne, knowing that she had changed, and that this would be a turning point in her life. Not just a part of the story. Dwayne stepped outside, his eyes set forward. He didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was certain, today. He had done the right thing. And he would continue to stand up for justice. No matter how big or small the battle. The police and the classic twist, the powerful man had faced the truth and could not escape justice. The girl was freed. And it was Dwayne who led the change. But the story wasn't over yet. And in the next chapters, things would get even more intriguing with unexpected twists from those who seemed to have already won. The cafe fell silent once again. But this time not due to tension. Rather because of a strange feeling lingering in the air. The police had left with the powerful man. But Dwayne didn't leave the cafe. He stood there, leaning against the coffee counter, his gaze never leaving the girl. Everything seemed to be fine now. But Dwayne still felt something was incomplete. He turned to the girl, who was still sitting at the table. Her face had relaxed a little, though she still seemed uneasy. As if there were a vague worry, a lingering shadow in her mind that she couldn't shake off. "Are you okay?" Dwayne asked, his voice as calm as ever. The girl took a deep breath and looked at him with an emotional gaze. I think I'll be fine. Thank you so much. If it weren't for you, I don't know where this would have ended." Dwayne smiled lightly. "It's nothing. I just did what I thought was right. But remember, if you ever need help, I'll always be here." The girl nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. But Dwayne couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One small detail kept nagging at him: the man, though seemingly powerless now, was certainly not the type to give up easily. A man with that much power and influence couldn't just be defeated in a confrontation like the one they had just witnessed. Less than an hour later, Dwayne's phone rang. He looked at the screen and saw that it was the officer calling. He immediately picked up. "Dwayne. Where are you?" The officer's voice sounded rushed, tinged with worry. "I'm still at the cafe. Is something wrong?" Dwayne asked, stepping outside the cafe to avoid drawing attention. "You need to come back right now. I just received some very important news," the officer said, his tone heavy. "Everything we knew about that man, it's not the truth. And we need your help." Dwayne froze. He had sensed something wasn't right. But he hadn't expected it to be this serious. "What?" "I'll be right there." Dwayne quickly returned to the cafe, where the girl was still sitting alone. He saw the officer waiting at the door. He walked over and shook his hand. "What's going on?" Dwayne asked, his eyes fixed on the officer. "We need to talk." "Now," the officer replied, his face serious. "I've just received new information from a reliable source. That man isn't just who he seems. He's actually part of a large criminal organization. He's been running a network of illegal activities from the shadows. And his goal isn't just to threaten that girl." Dwayne felt as if the ground beneath him had given way. He exhaled deeply, blinking a few times to process the reality of what he was hearing. "Wait. What? A criminal organization?" Dwayne asked in disbelief. "Exactly. And what's even more alarming is that he's not the only one. In our investigation, we found signs that he's been linked to powerful figures within the police force. And even government agencies. He's part of a vast network that's been pulling strings from the shadows. The officer fell silent, allowing Dwayne to digest this information. Dwayne took a deep breath. We need to act fast. I can't let him get away. The officer nodded. Exactly. But to do that, we need concrete evidence. All we have right now are rumors and theories. And we need your help. You're the only one who's gotten close to him and might have crucial information. Dwayne didn't respond right away. He thought about the events that had unfolded earlier, the confrontation with the man. The brief conversation. Which now he realized was just an act. Dwayne understood that this wasn't just about protecting an innocent girl. This was a real battle. A battle between truth and power. All right. Dwayne said. His eyes sharpening. I'll help. But we need to move quickly. I can't imagine what he'll do next if we don't act. The officer nodded. We've already made a plan. But everything depends on you. You need to go back to him and set up a situation that will expose him. You need to extract important information from him. Dwayne fell silent. Thinking about the plan. He knew it wouldn't be an easy mission. But there was no other choice. He had to do this, not just for the girl. But for all the other nameless victims being exploited in the shadows. All right. Dwayne responded. I'll do it. But everything has to be perfectly planned. If there's any mistake, we'll fail. The officer sighed and handed Dwayne a small USB drive. This is a copy of some crucial documents we've gathered from one of his associates. It's all we have for now. You need to bring him into the light. Dwayne. Dwayne took the USB and tucked it into his jacket pocket. We won't let him escape. Returning to the cafe, Dwayne looked at the girl one last time. She didn't fully understand the complicated situation he was stepping into. But he knew she wouldn't be able to return to a peaceful life unless the truth came to light. That's why he had to go further. The story wasn't over yet. There was still so much to do. Many obstacles to overcome. And a major revelation waiting ahead. Dwayne couldn't back down. Knowing that things would only get more complicated from here. Finally. After all the twists. Tense situations. And intense battles of wits. The story of the powerful man and the criminal organization comes to an end. However. What is most memorable is not necessarily what happened. But the lessons we can learn from it. Life is not always easy. Sometimes. We face unexpected and unpredictable situations. Just like Dwayne. Who thought he was simply helping an innocent girl. Only to unknowingly step into a much bigger battle. This is not just a story about exposing a powerful man. It's a story about courage. Standing up when we see what's wrong. And making the right decisions. Even when facing danger. Looking back. We can see that the greatest challenges in life often provide opportunities for growth. Dwayne never hesitated to help others. Even though he knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But it was precisely in those difficult moments that he found the strength of righteousness. And not only changed the fate of one girl but also shook a powerful criminal network. The girl in this story. Once a vulnerable person. Learned a crucial lesson about strength and self-defense. Although the road ahead remains tough. She underwent a significant shift in her thinking. No one can live forever under the shadow of fear. She realized that only by standing up. Facing the truth. And being willing to fight. Can we truly take control of our lives. The lesson here is not just about one individual's transformation. But the power of community. The importance of standing up against evil. Even when it means risking everything. Dwayne and the police didn't fight for justice alone. They proved that one person cannot change the world by themselves. But if we all come together, the impossible can happen. A story can end here. But our story is not just one story. It serves as a reminder that we, too, can be like Dwayne, standing up when we see what's wrong, fighting to protect the vulnerable, and never giving up in the face of hardship. Sometimes, the actions of one person can change the lives of many others. And you, too, can become that person. So, what is the life lesson we learn from this story? It is, never back down when you know you are doing the right thing. Don't be afraid to face challenges because only by standing firm can we change the world around us. Life may not always be fair. But we always have the power to choose to stand for justice. If you found this story meaningful and inspiring, please share it with your friends and family. Because this story is not just about Dwayne or the girl in the cafe. It's a story about all of us, those who dare to stand for the truth, for justice, and for what is right. If this story has made an impact on you, don't hesitate to leave a comment below the video. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you do if faced with a difficult decision? What do you think about Dwayne's and the girl's actions in the story? How can we create change in our own lives and the community around us? Every story is not just a lesson. It is an opportunity for us to reflect on ourselves, to think about what we've done, and to act better in the future. It is you. With every decision, with every action, who can make a difference. Don't miss the opportunity to change your life because everything starts with you. If this story has given you motivation and you want to continue exploring inspiring tales with us, don't forget to click the subscribe button and share. And always remember, in this world, if each of us acts for good, the world will become a better place to live. Thank you for following our story. Always keep your faith in justice and never give up when you know you are doing the right thing. Life is not easy. But it is people like you who will bring about great change in this world. See you in the next stories, where we will continue to explore wonderful things and keep walking the path of justice.